You are listening to episode 5 of the Coach's Locker podcast with Chris Four. Today we're going to have Kevin Swift, head football coach and athletic director at Gold Beach High School up in Oregon, come on and share a lot with us. He's a tremendous coach, has a lot of wisdom and information to share with coaches all over, not just football coaches. You're going to learn a lot of principles, a lot of great insight into the coaching world. Coach Swift started his career down here in California after a stellar playing career at Servite High School, one of the top academic institutions and athletic institutions in the nation. And after that, he went to FCS Northern Iowa, transferred out of there out to University of Redlands back home here in Southern California. Upon graduation, he went and started his coaching career as a secondary coach at Claremont McKenna College. After just 2 years, he became a defensive coordinator. After just 2 years of coaching. That's pretty amazing. At a Division III school back at Redlands. After that, he returned to the high school sidelines by coaching and teaching. Started that career at Fullerton High School. 20 years later, he's been here at Gold Beach up in Oregon. Again, he's had a lot of success up there. 10 years, more than 10 years of quarterfinals or better in the playoffs. He's taken 5 of his Gold Beach Panther football teams to state title games, and he's won 2. He's won 2 of those state titles. Gold Beach is a unique place. 150 kids. They're in the Siskiyou National Forest. They're a natural resource community. That means they depend on fishing and logging and tourism. And it's middle class to lower class families and student athletes he's working there. Again, we're going to welcome Coach Kevin Swift onto the show. Thank you for listening to the Coach's Locker podcast, episode 5. You are listening to the Coach's Locker podcast with Chris Four, a place for all coaches to call home. The Coach's Locker podcast is a part of the Football Coaching Podcast Network. Please visit footballcoachingpodcast.com to hear and see our entire lineup of top football coaches coming to you every single podcast with valuable information to help you and your program. The Coach's Locker podcast with Chris Four exists to help prepare coaches to be hired for the job of their dreams and to provide coaches with dynamite resources to become even more successful in their field. You can reach me on Twitter at Coach4. That's at COACHFORE. And my podcast home is at 8laces.org/podcast. That's 8laces, EIGHTLACES.org/podcast. Welcome to the Coach's Locker podcast with Chris Four. Now, let's get after it. Hands up, forget about the past, 'cause you and I's everything I ever asked for. Top down round the West Coast. All right, hey, Coach Swift, we'd like to welcome you. Thank you for joining the Coach's Locker Room podcast. This is May 21st, and it is Coach Swift's birthday. He has accepted an invitation to talk to me for about 40 minutes on his birthday. What a guy. Coach, thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Appreciate it. I've had a nice day. And I'm glad I could join you and help with the coaching profession and the brotherhood, and hopefully someone picks up a little nugget that can help them develop the kind of program that they want.
Coach, I saw some pictures of you on Twitter this weekend taking the boat out. You have any luck catching fish up there?
No, we had a really good time, though. The Springer salmon fishing is probably the most difficult to salmon fishing. They're pretty elusive. And we went out for about 4 or 5 hours. I didn't want to spend the whole day out, so we went in at about 7 and pulled out about 1 o'clock. But we had a nice breakfast on the river. We had some beautiful views, saw some great wildlife. Just didn't catch a salmon, but we'll keep giving it a try. We'll get them. It picks up. It's considerably better fishing in June, July, and August than it is right now. But if I sat around the house, I would have been given chores to do. So I jumped at the chance to go fish for a few hours.
Who'd you go with?
I went with my neighbor.
Awesome.
We kind of both got a boat together that we kind of, one day he'll captain, the next day I'll captain. It's just easier if you got a couple people working on it. So we took the boat out and went about 3 miles upriver and anchored up and got the lines out and fixed a nice breakfast on the boat, had some coffee, and enjoyed a beautiful day. Saw a young coyote come down to the river, get some water, and saw the osprey and the elk. We just didn't see any salmon, dang it.
Well, you'll get them next time.
Oh, I will. It's not like my fridge is empty. In fact, we're having salmon tonight. So every now and then Mother Nature has to win. So
there you go. Well, Coach, we do a thing here at the very start just for our listeners to get to know you a little bit better. It's called the kickoff, the tip, and the first pitch. So I got 7 questions I'm going to throw at you, and we'll see how you do on these, Coach. Let me ask you this. The kickoff, the tip-off, and the first pitch. Coach, tell us about the first team you played on and what you remember from that, the very first team you ever played on.
1972, Marco Forrester Roadrunners, the middle school in Capistrano Unified. I played with Mark McElroy, who is the head coach at Saddleback Community College now, junior college. And against Aliso Viejo, I threw 7 touchdowns in a game as a 7th grader. It was flag football, so you're throwing the ball every down, but it was a good experience. That same year when I was playing flag football at the middle school, I played Pop Warner for the Capo Valley Cougars and played with Steve Crapo and the Romeros, which are all big athletic families from South Orange County during the time. Crapo's the defensive coordinator at Saddleback. And we had a pretty memorable season. I think we were like 9-2. So, no, they were good experiences. And I got to rub elbows with, at the time, South Orange County's better athletes, and got to enjoy that experience as a 7th grader.
That's awesome. For those who don't know, Southern California, Orange County, where Coach comes from, we talked a little bit about his background on the intro here. Sam Darnold, who was just picked in the NFL first round of that draft, Sam grew up maybe within 5 to 7 minutes of the school here Coach Swift's talking about. That's awesome, Coach. Coach, what about
Bill?
Yeah.
Bill Kinney, who threw for some records for the Chiefs, played at San Clemente during the same time because I was good friends with his younger brother. So, yeah, there was a lot of good athletes coming out of South Orange County at this time, I not being one of them.
Coach, how about the last team you played on, and what do you remember from that team, the very last team you ever played on?
I played for the University of Redlands, and I remember sitting in a bathtub cutting off the cast on my left arm so that I could play in the last game at University of Redlands for Frank Cerejo, who's a legendary coach in that area. And so I cut the cast off, and the trainer and the doctor kind of said, okay, we'll let you roll the dice this last game. So I sat in the tub on Wednesday night with a saw and took the cast off and taped it up pretty tight. It's kind of funny. I just got done telling my wife, I go, I finally figured out what is hurting my wrist for all these years. I broke it like 35 years ago, and I think it's arthritis. And she kind of looked at me and just laughed. So that's the last thing I remember from Redlands is cutting off the cast so I could play against Occidental in the last game of the season.
We don't see too many of those stories anymore of kids cutting off. Well, I guess you weren't a kid, you were an adult, college level, but still being able to cut off your own cast and get out there and play. That's a time long gone for us now.
Too many lawyers.
There you go. Coach, who's been your main mentor in the coaching profession?
I kind of knew at a really young age that I was had the DNA. I think probably my father has had both the greatest influence on me of both things to do and things not to do.
Yeah.
But he's been a great mentor. He coached for 52 years, primarily as a football and track coach. And in the last few years, he coached girls soccer. He's a big mentor. John Zinda, who was the head coach at Claremont McKenna Colleges, was the first person to hire me, was a great mentor. Bruce Rollinson, through my 20 years up here at Gold Beach, has been a friend, a mentor, and an assistant at helping me build the program that I want. And then finally, my freshman coach at Servite, who would become my godfather when I chose to join the Catholic Church, Larry Toner. So, I couldn't pick one. All of them have been mentors of turning me in to the coach and the educator that I am.
Yeah, definitely. It's always hard to pick just one guy. We learn from so many different people in this profession along the way, so I appreciate each of those. Yeah, your dad, man, more than 5 decades as a teacher and coach. That's very impressive. Very impressive. Coach.
Yes, it is. I'm very proud of that accomplishment. I don't plan on doing that myself, but I'm very, very proud of his accomplishment.
Coach, speaking of accomplishments, leads right into question number 5 here on the kickoff, the tip-off, and the first pitch. What is your greatest accomplishment as a coach? What is your greatest accomplishment to date?
We went, in my 20 years here, 17 as the head coach, because I took the last 4 off and I've just come back to it this year. But in the first 17 years when I was the head football coach, we had 2 0-10 seasons. And I am probably as proud of those as I am of any state championships for the following reasons. When you're going 0-10, kids jump ship pretty quickly. They kind of, hey, this isn't going the way I want. I'm not playing much. I want to leave. And both of those teams that went 0-10, not one single kid quit. Not only didn't quit that season, didn't quit the program. So kids that went 0-10 as sophomores came back as juniors and seniors, and in their senior year played in a state championship game. And we all get caught up in the wins, and I'm proud of them. I really am. But I think how young people and how coaches and how communities respond to adversity tells you a whole lot about the character of that community and those kids. And no one quit. And I can't tell you how just honored I am that they respected what we were doing enough and respected their teammates enough in their community that they took their lumps, and they definitely kept score. I mean, they knew who was pumping them, and they knew what the scores were. And I'm not going to say we got our revenge, because I don't think that's a great word, but we definitely evened the score over the next 2 years, and in some cases, tipped the score in our favor. So I'm extremely proud of those 2 teams.
That's awesome. So let me ask you this, Coach, because I think there's definitely a lot of coaches listening who have been 0-10 in the football season, and if they haven't, they just haven't coached enough yet. I always like to say. Maybe that's because I've got an 0-4 in my belt. 2008, we were 0-10, and it is awful. I've written about it on my website. I lost focus during that year. I'll be very honest with you. As a younger head coach, it just became all about I pressed and pressed and pressed for a win. We've got to win. And so, and we lost kids. I lost 2 kids. I think we had a squad of about 25 kids, and we lost two or three kids that year who quit, walked away. How did you keep all of your kids engaged going through a season like that, Coach?
I think you keep it challenging but fun, and you look for other wins. We weren't going to win any games those years. If you're at a small rural school and you're primarily playing with freshmen and sophomores, against teams that are seniors and juniors, you better be really good as sophomores because you're going to struggle. So, we looked at wins as, hey, what's our team GPA looking like? What's the locker room like after practice? Who's giving me an effort in the weight room? Who's giving, and you're absolutely right. I mean, it's probably the most painful, humbling, battering your ego a coach has ever gone through is to go 0-10 because, we all have the answers. And in reality, sometimes we just don't have the answers. Sometimes your kids are just too young. You're not coaching them well enough. Maybe they're not willing to learn it yet because of maturity ages. There's a whole lot of variety, and it's easy, as you said and alluded to, it's really easy to get down. And I'm not going to lie to anybody that is in the profession. Those were miserable years for me. Oh, God, they were miserable.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you're married and you have kids. It's your wife and kids that bear the brunt of it because you're trying to keep that stiff upper lip in public. You're trying to be optimistic. You're trying to be the leader that those coaches. 0 for seasons are just brutal for coaches' families because that's where he has a chance to let his frustrations out, to let our disappointments out, to let our hardships out, and those poor wives and children, they take it, and I don't know where I'd be if I didn't have the wife and kids I have at home to help me get through those, because I'm not sugarcoating at all. I mean, holy cow, it's miserable. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. You're right, you coach long enough, it's going to happen, but I certainly wouldn't wish it on anybody.
No way. So, you're right about the home life. I mean, I look back and I just try to figure out how I made it through. We had a 1-month-old. My little girl was 1 month old, and then my oldest was 18 months when that season started. And boy, so it was rough at home. It was rough at work. It was rough with the coaching. Oh yeah,
I mean, both those years, I had old timers in town start petitions to get rid of me. And after the second 0-10 season, we had a community meeting, and I said, look, next time bring it to my house first so I can sign it. And fortunately, and we've alluded this in several of our conversations, Chris, we ended up developing the program that we wanted, not because the community stayed loyal to me. I mean, the community, my first 5 years, I think, was trying to fire me the first 5 years. I had an administrator who had a coaching background and knew that I knew what I was doing and stayed solid and held out against board pressure and held out against community pressure and kept me. And the kids were always in my corner, always. I never had to worry about the kids going to bat for me. It was the parents and the community, because, everybody in the stands really should be coaching in the NFL. It's just their day job that gets in the way of that. But the administration stood by me, believed in me. Any other thing, I was a good teacher. I think being a good teacher in the classroom, taking what you do that the bulk of your money comes from in doing it outstandingly allows administration more room to protect you as a coach.
Oh, well
said. If you're a clown in the classroom, it makes them really easy to get rid of you if you're not having the success on the football field. And I'm not implying, I have found in my 30 years of education that football coaches are usually your best teachers in the building. Hollywood likes to make it look the opposite of that with their ridiculous stereotyping. But I think the reality of it is, if you go across campus, your football coach and your other coaches on campus are usually your strongest teachers. So, that's kind of my little 2 cents there.
I've definitely seen that throughout my career as well. In fact, the school I'm at right now, Sultana High School, last year our teacher of the year was our head football coach. His name's Keith Locklear, good guy who took me over there back after the 2014 season, recruited me over there to coach with him, and And he didn't get that because of, the football program won a championship or something. I think they might have been 3-7 last year. So, but he's an outstanding history teacher. So, yeah, you're right on. Coach, what would you say is your favorite vacation spot? Wrapping up here with the kickoff, the tip-off, and the first pitch, getting to know you a little better. What's your favorite vacation spot?
My porch overlooking the creek.
That's tremendous. We'll take that. Coach, what's yeah.
Our summer on the southern Oregon coast is definitely something painted by God. And you're just foolish. We get the heat. There's no rain. The salmon are in. It's beautiful. The river's not. I mean, I'd like to find someplace to go in February when it's raining sideways. But I'm usually working. I like a whole lot where I live, sitting on the porch over a campfire, listening to the creek go by my porch, looking at the deer. That's about all I need, to tell you the truth.
I visited. You were kind enough to have me up there to Gold Beach, Oregon, back in 2014. I went up and visited the camp up there, and my kids have been asking me ever since when we're going back to Oregon, because it is a beautiful, beautiful place.
Well, yeah, that time of year it is. So
yeah, boy, it was nice.
To leave, so exactly.
Coach, what's your favorite thing to do? You might have just answered this a little bit, but we'll see. What's your favorite thing to do outside of coaching and spending time with your family? What's your favorite thing to do outside of those two things?
I like to be in the water. I like to be in the water either fishing or I like to be in the water surfing. I'm definitely a coastal person by trade. I like being in the water. I don't surf as much as I used to. I tell the kids it's because I'm just not as fast to get away from the sharks anymore. But I do a lot of fishing. I do a lot of surfing. I'm trying to save up some pennies to get a stand-up paddle board so I can, as you get older, the thought of putting on a wetsuit and all that rubber just isn't as appealing. But I like to be on the water doing something.
Awesome. Well, Coach, tell us a little bit about, again, the audience heard a little bit about your bio here, but tell us a little bit about the school you're at, because the reason I wanted to talk to you, Coach Swift, here is to give coaches from all walks. This is not just football, although a lot of the folks listening are probably football coaches, but I wanted to give coaches a little view of what it's like to coach in a rural school. There are coaches listening in communities like yours or smaller, and I think it'd be good to hear how you've been able to find success. You've built some tremendous success there at Gold Beach, having won 2 football state championships as a head football coach. Not only win 2, but play in 5 state title games, 10 years of quarterfinals or better in the playoffs up there. So tell us a little bit about the school that you're at. Paint that picture for us.
Gold Beach is a school that's 100 years old, parts of it. It is 20 years ago when I moved here in 1997, it was 290 students. Today it is 150 students. We are on the mouth of the wild and scenic Rogue River. It's one of the original 7 rivers designated by Congress as wild and scenic. We are in the middle of the Siskiyous National Forest, and we are surrounded by BLM National Forest timberland with the Pacific Ocean to our west. We're a natural resources community in the fact that it's commercial fishing and logging, and while logging has been reduced, it's still what we do, and we fish more sports fishing than commercial fishing, and tourism is big for us, but like a lot of natural resources communities, we're struggling to diversify and try to find our niche. The school is basically middle class to low middle class. When I got here, it was middle class, the professionals, the lawyers. But over the years, their kids have graduated and gone on. And and we've more mill workers, more manufactured workers, a lot of grandparents raising kids. And so it's a school where I know every kid in the building. Every kid in the building is going to come through my classroom. Our faculty meetings can be held in a classroom because there's only 7 of us. I and the girls basketball coach are the only 2 coaches on staff. We average between 28 and 37 kids in our football program, and that's freshmen through seniors. We all practice and work together, and we break off for JV or frost soft games, whatever you want to call them, depending on where you are in the nation and what they call them. Just typical, we got 2 stoplights. Dairy Queen went out of business about 2 years ago. Subway went out of business about 2 years ago. So we got maybe 2 or 3, restaurants, couple bars. Got Jerry's Jet Boat, and our football stadium is right on the beach. It was a culture shock for them, me coming to be their coach, as it was as much for me coming out of high school of 3,300 to a high school of 290. It was eye-opening for everybody. So good times, though. Good times.
Yeah, Coach. So what are the challenges now that you face? I mean, I've been an athletic director at a small school of, 170 kids. So I know the challenges, that you're going to face there. I once heard an AD at a large school said to a friend of mine, well, you don't know what it's like to be in my shoes. You've only been an AD at a tiny little school. And I thought, dude, you have no idea, man. As AD at a tiny school, you are the custodian, you are the ticket seller, the ticket taker. You might have to sing the national anthem. You're going to have to keep score. So, yeah, what are the challenges you face as an athletic director and a head coach at a small school like Gold Beach that we might not ever think of, or that guy or gal thinking about going to a rural school? What are some of those challenges that they need to think through?
Well, the first thing I would tell you is don't fall into the slower pace of lifestyle trap. Julie, my wife, and I, 20 years ago with a 4-month-old, left Dana Point and headed up with the idea that we were going to go to a rural community for a slower pace of life, an easier pace of life. And when we got here, we found out really quickly that rural or small town really meant it's just less people doing more. I probably work harder and longer hours up here than I ever did at a big school. And I'm not a big school, small school. I've 30 years. I started at small college, and now I'm at a school of 150. And I know, well, you're at a small school, you don't know what it's like. And, you're at a big school, you don't know what it's like. We all have unique problems, and we all go about solving them in the atmosphere and the environment that we want. I think the thing that's unique for us is not only are we small, we're isolated. It is now the end of May, and I still cannot find a volleyball coach to coach my varsity come August, and we've been looking since November.
Oh, yikes!
We still don't have a science teacher in the building because our salaries aren't as competitive as those on the I-5, and our housing, because of all us Californians that have moved up here, the real estate prices are higher than they should be. So finding coaches, finding teachers is really, really difficult because we're isolated. I mean, you're at a school of 170, but you're in the LA Basin, you put out a coaching advertisement, you're going to get 50 applicants, probably 30 of them qualified in some case. I took the head coaching position in February when the coach I hired retired or wanted to spend more time with his boys, which is the right thing to do. I called my oldest and longest serving assistant coach, and he said, sure, I'll do it with you. but the three others said, "Are you crazy? What are you doing this for again?" And so I'm now going into spring ball next week with me, my longtime assistant, and then three really good guys who I'm going to have to teach football to as much as I have to teach it to the kids. They're not, we call them football coaches because they're going to coach football, but they're not football coaches. They're not on Twitter going to Texas chat, finding out what to do. They're not going to clinics. They watch it on Saturday. They watch the high school game from the stands, and they have all the answers. And they're good guys. And when asked, they said, "Hey, can we get involved?" And you don't have a whole lot to choose from, and so you end up coaching coaches. And I spent a lot of time coaching coaches and coaching players who end up being, some of my better coaches. So I think those are the things that are unique. I think the other things that are unique, because not only are we small, but we're isolated, we can't send laundry out. So our whites, instead of being dry cleaned, get put in industrial washers. And so we got to replace our whites more often because they gray. Declining enrollment means declining dollars for the school. So, my football team last year, who won league, got to play the whole season with a scoreboard that didn't work because there was no money. So, it's kind of funny. You have a team playing with no scoreboard and everybody wants to know, and all of a sudden they hey, here's some money for it, here's some money for it, because the scoreboard needed to be replaced 5 years ago, but we have such a great electrician in town that with baling wire and Band-Aids and, I don't know, weird science, always got it working, and he flat out couldn't get it working this year. And so, my poor kids played a 10-game season with no scoreboard, which I thought was a real slap in the face to them by our community. But come the end of November, I raised the $20,000 in like 3 weeks to get it done. So, and I think those problems exist at big schools. I think those problems exist at small colleges. I think they exist at junior colleges. I think, how you and I are very much alike, Chris, in the fact that, okay, here's a problem. I don't like it, but I'm not going to spend my time complaining or that. I'm going to spend useful time trying to come up with a solution to solve it. And I think you have to do that because the kids are watching.
Yeah.
If you make excuses and you don't solve it, then you just granted your team that same privilege to make excuses and not solve it either. So, they're all unique. You can go to the store in Hesperia and 90% of the people aren't going to know who you are. If I go to the store in Gold Beach, I'm never going to get out of there. Because everybody knows, who I am and what I'm doing and what I'm up to. So, but, and then I think fundraising, I think anytime you got to continually tap the same people, even though we're small, we field the same number of teams as big high schools do. We have Little League, we have junior high sports, and with educational dollars being cut back and extracurricular activities falling upon parents and coaches and communities to fundraise, I think communities like Gold Beach or Myrtle Point or Reedsport, which are all in our league, the guy that runs the local market is probably getting hit up 5-6 times a week by everybody who's got a good organization who needs money. So I think those are the things that are the most difficult for us. So does that help? Did that answer your question?
It does, yeah. So that actually leads right in my next question in regards to fundraising. I know that. So let's talk about it real practical. How did you go about raising that $20,000? Because I know that the way you can't nickel and dime a small community every time you turn around. So does the school have an overall strategy? How do you fundraise in that small community?
Yeah, the school's strategy is tell Swift we need money and he'll figure it out. And I'm not joking. That's been the way for 20 years. We had a logging outfit. All their kids played for me that came in and said, "Hey, we're going to give you $10,000 for it. We don't want it. We don't want any signage. We don't even sponsorship. We're just a good family trying to help you. And you can use our donation to try to get other people to donate. So I got 10,000 from a logging outfit, a family log outfit. I got 5,000 from our brand new hospital, and they'll be our chief sponsor on the scoreboard. And then I had two wonderful ladies. I coached their sons, and we've stayed close. And you have to stay close in a small town. You're coaching your friends' kids, and I never had to do that in Southern California because there's separation. But here, you're just one giant dysfunctional family. So they stayed loyal to the program, and there are some of the few people who, after their kids played for me for 4 years, actually still liked me. And they went out and it appealed to community members because the community knows that I just don't like doing this. I mean, for 24 years, 4 years before I got here, in the 20 years, we ran one of the best team camps in the nation. And that's been down for 2 years because of school construction. And that's had a huge impact, not just on the fundraising for our football program, but, Dairy Queen went out of business, Subway went out of business because, that brought 4,000 people for 2 to 3 weeks to camp that all spent money here. And that's gone now. So, 10,000 from the logging family, 5,000 from the brand new hospital that we got, and then from various other people in the community, we got the other 5,000. And it took us about 3 weeks to pull that off. But let's not kid ourselves. If the scoreboard's not blank, then it doesn't happen because they see a scoreboard working and they go, well, what do you need money for a scoreboard working? It's fine. And they don't understand that you pulled your hair out for 3 months to hope that it fires up that 10 minutes before the game starts. And this year it didn't. So we get huge community support. Don't think that me saying that fundraising is difficult, meaning that we don't have huge community support. We are the flagship. We are the pride and joy of this community, and we take that seriously. But you can't give what you don't have to give. And I certainly don't want anyone to go out of business because they're donating the football. I mean, so it's just it's a real fine line there, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a good story about hearing something practical you did. That's what we want to do here is give guys practical advice and wisdom. Coach, tell us a little bit. I know you said 18 years that camp was going on. You guys raised $6 million over that time period through your football camps. Talk to us a little bit just about how that started. I know you're real passionate about those camps. I saw. I mean, it's the best tackle football camp. It's the best football camp I've ever seen. Period. I mean, I think there were 12 schools there the week I was there in 2014. They had a lifting competition. You imagine a gym, a tiny gym. I don't know how many did that thing seat? 500 people.
800 on a good day.
Okay, 800 people. Imagine a gym, filled 12 football teams worth of kids and parents and coaches in this gym. People lifting, all over the place, getting cheered on. They had 7-on-7 competitions and full team competitions. It was a tremendous camp, Coach. Tell us a little bit about how that started. And then if that thing's going to fire up at all again in the next couple years.
It's when I got here in 1997, I took over for a guy named Roger Van de Zan, who was a Don Markham disciple. And it's sad news to hear that we've lost a legend from the coaching ranks in Don Markham last week.
Yes.
But he started running the camp because tackle football camps had been going on in Oregon forever. Linfield's probably the oldest team camp on the West Coast. Me coming from Southern California where pads are taboo during the summer, And now that you have that ridiculous legislative law that has done that well, but pads were accepted in the Northwest. And so Roger ran it, and usually I ran 4 or 5 teams, and it was really low key, and they made a little bit of money, and they had parents come down with barbecues and barbecue them, and camp basically stopped at 7:00 at night, and he would lock the teams in the gym and all that. And I got here in 97, and I said, whoa, we got great facilities. We got a great location. We're right on Mainstream. We can make this camp something that can not only fund football, can fund a lot of our other sports, and more importantly, pump much needed tourist dollars into downtown Gold Beach in June, which is about 2 weeks ahead of when our 4th of July is kind of when our tourist season really kicks off, because the salmon are running, and people want to you want to catch a 52-pound salmon because it's probably a $400 or $500 fish that you're going to have a chance to eat over 6 months. So we Californianized it. I hate, they all got mad when I said that, but we added a little glamour. I said, if they're going to come, they're going to pay those dollars. And more importantly, we don't want them to get them in trouble. We need to be doing football from sun up to midnight. And we did. We, together, myself and my father, an administrator and former coach named John George, who's an administrator up in the Gresham district up in the Portland area, and another administrator football coach, Vic Lease, who's the head coach at Mazama. I kind of picked those guys, and we sat down and we spent a lot of hours over the winter months saying, hey, here's our field. And you were here. It's a logistics and time management Rubik's Cube. It works. You better be able to adjust. You better be able to think on the fly and do things. And I think coaches and teams loved coming for a variety of reasons. You had several options on how you were going to stay. Were you going to stay in the gym? Were you going to stay in a classroom? Were you going to camp out in tents? We're right on the beach. It's easy for kids that want to put on pads when it's 65, 68, as opposed to 103. And then we ran pass league tournaments and lineman league tournaments, and we did the lifting competition, and we split that into weight classes, and we split that into the size of schools, and so we just turned it into a huge football festival, complete with tackle football, and we've always been ahead of the curve. Oregon's not like a whole lot of other states with the concussion scare. They started looking at keeping, reducing camps, doing away with camps. Do we want camps? And fortunately for us, since the day I got here, we kept really good medical records, and we kept them. The hospital worked well with us and kept them. And so whenever injuries or concussions or trauma would come up, we would be able to go up there with the CEO of the hospital and present our information and kind of blow holes in there. We have a concussion crisis. And quite frankly, the last year we ran camp before this 2-year sabbatical, we had 5 concussions. So we had one session, we had 10 teams. So let's just figure the average team is 40. So you had 400 kids. We had 5 concussions, but 3 of those concussions
this is great.
Were from horseplay.
Yeah.
In their team, we had a pillow fight. Oh, I was, doing so-and-so, and I fell, and I got that. So out of 400 athletes and 5 days of heavy practice and pads and contact, we had 2 concussions. So there is a concussion crisis. I'm not sure what it is. we definitely need to make the game safer. We definitely need to be aware of concussions. And I'm old, so, I'm probably a little senile now at 59. But, Chris, where in the heck are the numbers that prove the concussion crisis? They keep telling us we have a concussion crisis. They keep telling us we have a CTE crisis, but they can't give me any numbers. They can't give me any stats that are meaningful. Well, we did autopsies on 48 NFL brains. Well, but where's the non-NFL brains that you did autopsies? I mean, and I don't want to seem insensitive, because look, I went back into coaching after 30 years and 4 years off, not to win state titles. I went in to keep Gold Beach as a high school sport at Gold Beach, to get the numbers up to where they need, to have participation, because a high school without football in America is a sad, sad story. Okay? I'm not the one that developed that culture, but I'm the one that's learned it, loved it, and wants to see it there. And so, we ran, at the peak, we ran 3 sessions. One year we had 18, 18, and 10, and then we all looked at each other and said, we're never going to do 18 at one session again in our lives.
Yeah, that's a lot of football teams.
But it pumped, like you said, over the years, it pumped $6 million into Main Street, Gold Beach. And it's gone for 2 years, and we have every intentions of bringing it back next year. We do. If I live that long, yes, we will bring it back next year.
Well, listen, guys, Coach did not ask me to give him a commercial, but I'm going to tell you right now, follow him on Twitter, okay? Because one, he's an old dinosaur who gives out some really great advice, been around for a long time. But also, I know that Coach Swift, when he gets that camp up and running again, if he does, you'll want to take your team there. And so it's KDAWG, Swift, SWIFT, KDAWG, SWIFT. Give him a follow on Twitter so you can see what's going on with that camp in the future. Again, I was able to visit back in a couple years ago, and it is just a tremendous place for your team to come together, to bond, for your parents. I can't remember which school it was, Coach. That year it was they had the largest contingency out there. I think
it's Capital from Boise.
Capital, there you go. And they had, I don't know, Coach, you would know, but I would say 15 to 20 parents all there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sitting in the same place all day under the team tents. And every time I walked by those parents, they were just having a ball, having a great time together. And they were cooking, and they were keeping ice fresh for the boys and putting out fruit, and they were playing card games. So they were having a great time themselves. I think that camp just does so much for a football team. I met a guy named Charlie Hall. Coach Hall is now the head football coach at Southern Oregon University. He was the head coach, I believe, at Ashland. Is that the right school?
That's correct. He was an assistant for Coach Nagel at Ashland, and Coach Nagel, if you know anything about California, coached Darren and Kevin Nilsson at Pius X before it closed. Oh. And Nagel came to Ashland and turned Ashland into a powerful big school program in Oregon. Coach Nagel stepped down. Charlie took over, and then when Coach Howardly tragically died, University of Southern Oregon hired Coach Hall, who's just, let me tell you something, and we're about polar opposites. I mean, he's a flashy, good-looking kid. He throws the ball. He does, but I mean, I consider him a close, and I'm a fire and brimstone, and and we're going to run the ball. And, you know, if you don't have a tight end, it's not real football, that type of stuff. And we're the best, and we're the best of friends. And it's kind of, and I tell our kids, you know, one of the things that I was fortunate enough to do as an athlete is I played both Division I, and then I bounced back to Division III. Southern is an NAIA program, which is probably the equivalent to a Division II. And I steer a lot of our kids to those small schools. Number one, that's where their ability gives them the best chance of playing. But Charlie at Southern Oregon is it's a great program. It's right on the California border. It's one of the most beautiful settings in all of Oregon, and they got it going. They really do, and he's doing a great job. And we've had some great coaches. You know, Tony Sanchez, the head coach at UNLV, spent 4 years bringing California high school from San Ramon to camp.
Oh, awesome.
And Tony,
I didn't know that.
And his brothers, Tony was at California high school in San Ramon. He beat everybody in the North Coast section except for that little Catholic school in Concord that seems to have everybody's number. God, I love it. I love it. I used to give him a hard time. I go, you know what? You're not going to beat us Catholic kids. And then he goes off and takes the Bishop Gorman job and finds out it's good to be coaching Catholic kids. But even though they're not all Catholic kids. But he's done a great job. We've had, let me tell you something, we've had just some amazing coaches. Todd Simmons at Capitals, one of the best high school coaches I've ever seen. And in some of these small school, you know, guys that I compete against, this Dennis Dunley at Lost River runs a full house tee, runs the belly option. I mean, you think you're watching Bo Schimbeckler and Woody Hayes stuff, and he just does a great job. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a good time. And we miss it. Yes, we have every intentions of bringing it back. So I appreciate the commercial, Chris. You didn't have to do that, but yeah, I do. And I thought it was only fair that I give a plug to Southern Oregon and Charlie's recruiting efforts too. So yeah, you got to balance it all. So
I ran into Charlie at the American Football Coaches Association conference out in North Carolina this year, and it was we've talked a little bit over the last 4 years since I met him, but that's the first time I've seen him since being up there at Gold Beach. It was good to talk about his experience at the college level. It wasn't even on our notes here, but the conversation just led to that camp as we talked about fundraising. I mean, that running a camp like that, it can be it can be a lucrative thing. Obviously, you never thought it was going to bring in $6 million, but raise a couple $1,000 your first year to get that going. That's a good idea when you have something like that to offer. Coach, I was wondering this because I think you could probably throw a football into the Pacific Ocean from your west end zone, right?
Yeah.
So is there
I'm 59. I can't anymore, but yes, them young kids could, yes.
So let me ask you this, because California pretty darn well. All up and down the whole western coast, is there an end zone? Is there a football field closer to the ocean than Gold Beach High School?
Oh, there has to be. Isn't Santa Barbara Community College right on the beach or lagoon?
I think there's a street between the field and the ocean. I don't think it's as close as you guys.
You know what? I don't know. I mean,
all right, I'm gonna find.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
I'll find out. Coach.
Well, you know what? Hey. Now Barrow, Washington. I mean, Barrow, Alaska is right on the north slope, right there on the edge of the ice in the ocean. So they might have me beat. I think I got a little bit better temperature than they do, though.
But is that you know what? So interesting story. I met Coach Battle. Coach Battle is a head coach up there, and Coach I met him at Glacier Clinic this year. I asked him, man, what's it like coaching in Alaska? They won a state championship this past season up there for the Barrow Whalers, And yep, he is right there on the ocean, so that's true. But Coach, he showed me this tremendous picture. I asked him what some challenges are of coaching there in Alaska. He said, "Well, I bet you never ever rolled up. The kids have to ride a school bus to the field every day from their campus." And he said, "I bet you never rolled up to your field and saw a polar bear sitting on the 50-yard line." And I said, "Nope, I never have." And he busted out his phone and had a picture of that. So that was really stinging cool. So, all right, Coach.
Yeah, we've had to chase elk. We haven't had to chase a polar bear.
Yeah, that's a whole different story. So I know you don't like talking a lot about yourself and the success you've had, but I want you to brag a little bit, because here's the meat here kind of the conversation as we wrap up. So you've taken, I don't know how many state championships they had there, before you got there, but taking a small school to a state championship 5 times, I don't care where you are, the size of school you're at, that's very impressive. You've won 2 of them. What are some ways that you have built championships there with a small group of kids that you have to choose from?
Okay, so I put a list together here for you. So let's start with this. One of the reasons we moved here was because it's a small town and it's isolated and it's rural. Isolation kills you. Your kids who play Little League ball against the same kids they played Little League ball their entire life, the town doesn't change. So they get that big fish mentality when they're swimming in a puddle of water. So as camp got going, the first thing I did, because we were running camp for about 5 or 6 years, and we would do okay in camp, but it never translated to the season. It never translated to some of the cultural things that I wanted to get done. We created a 0 period, which was a graded, you get a credit, a physical education elective credit to show up for weightlifting, nutrition, leadership, football class, and we still had trouble getting the kids signed up for it. I think, those early years I might have had 10, 12 kids signed up for it, and we were always right, there around 500, never got over the hump, never got to where we wanted to be. So starting in 2004, we got 2 Suburbans together. We threw all of our senior football players in it, and we drove from Gold Beach to Dana Point, San Juan Capistrano. My mom was still alive at this time. And we would dump 9 to 13 seniors at my parents' house. And we would spend 9 days in Southern California. 4 of them was Modern Day High School. And Modern Day starts practice at 7 in the morning in July. And they get done about 11:30. And so the deal was, we're going to go. And, I had kids as we're going across the Golden Gate Bridge going, "God, Coach, I've never been further south than Eureka." And I'm like,
wow.
Well, hold on. Here we go. And so we would, Coach wanted to surf in some warm water, which was a big motivation for me taking him down there. So, we would do 4 days at Modern Day. We would literally do the workouts with our kids. Bruce, Dave Money, Ed Begini, who was on the staff back then, they were the most welcoming, accommodating. Bruce even had us run our option against them because they were going to open up against Orange Lou one year and they wanted to be prepared for option. And I think this is what our kids found out, because you can't tell kids anymore. You got to show them. Because I kept telling them, I go, there's schools that lift you around. There's kids that work every day during the summer, and they have fun doing it. And my kids are like, yeah, whatever, Swift. Right. And then when I actually took them down there, and, Modern Day has got 80 kids at 7 in the morning having fun, but yet working hard. So that 2014 came back from that summer, and all of a sudden we had 35 kids in the weight room every day. I had 35 kids signed up for 0 period. and we went to the state finals, and we lost by a point because one of your questions earlier was, what was your worst mistake ever as a coach? And that was not going for 2 in 2004. So I think taking kids, and I've talked to rural coaches all over the country, try to get your kids in a bigger bowl of water. Try to get your kids swimming in the ocean where it's not. And I used to tell the kids when we went down to Mater Dei, it's not about beating Mater Dei, guys. It's about competing. It's about having the courage to compete with Mater Dei. I go, quite frankly, some of you kids would go to Mater Dei and you'd be starters. Not because you're great athletes, because you buy into the culture and their culture makes their athletes. And that's what we're trying to do here. So 2004, we came back. Zero period became the stuff of legends around here. You talk to anybody in Gold Beach and they'll tell you that their football teams win because we outwork them in the weight room. You know, we try to emulate De La Salle. I'm a big Bob Ladouceur De La Salle fan. Everything that he's put out, video, book-wise, I've read, you know, we've adopted. So and then you tie that in with the teen camp. So my kids got, you know, a week of pads in the summer. You go down to Mater Dei, they get that. Zero period. And then the captain's dinners, the leadership dinners, the fastest way to a teenager's heart is through his stomach. And you know, I weighed about 185 when I married my wife, and I'm like 240 now. So she knows how to cook. And so the culture, you know, I read Randy's book, Culture Defeats Strategy, and so much of the stuff that's in there, I just did inherently. It's great stuff. I mean, everybody should read the book. And I like reading it because I go, wow, good, I did that. Oh, wow, I need to do that. I didn't do that. So I would say our team camp participation, making football a really big deal in Gold Beach, not just in the fall, but in the summer and other times of the year. I think that the 6 years of trips to Mater Dei while my mom was still alive were huge. I think zero period is the backbone of our culture. I read an interesting tweet today. A guy doesn't like the word grind because he thinks the only people that really grind are those military personnel that are trying to grind through conflict. And I agree with that. I mean, you know, football's a choice and it's hard work, but we took a really Spartan attitude when it came to working and our lifestyle and our training. And I think you're a quality coach, a quality educator. When kids start holding kids accountable, you got it made.
Absolutely.
You know, I don't have to tell kids they got to run the Kissing Rock because they're late. They know they got to do that. I don't have to tell kids they know they have to be at practice because I think we're big. We got a big time program in terms of image, but because we're small enough and most of these kids have gone to school their entire lives with each other, it's a family. It really is a brotherhood. Our kids, you know, the standard joke is if you get a sweatshirt from Coach Swift for doing a good job, 3 days later, some girl will be walking down the hallway with it and not know where she got it from because it's like one giant slumber party here. You know, kids, hey, we're crashing at their house. Oh, we're going camping this weekend. Oh, we're doing that. I mean, it's crazy. And then you compound that with trading night at football camp where the alleyway behind the main school turns into an Arab open air market with, you know, I'll give you a Gold Beach sweatshirt for a Capital pair of sweatpants, and that's a pretty cool event that we have. So I think all those things, and then the last thing I think that's allowed it, and I think it's more to administrators than anyone else, put coaches in the buildings where they can create relationships.
Absolutely.
I think that's, I mean, you know, you and I have had this discussion. I don't think administrators hire coaches today because when parents come unglued, it's easy to get rid of them.
Yep.
You know, and administrators, They don't have to stand by a coach because he's not a teacher. Yeah, we'll get rid of him. He doesn't know. Parents are calling too much of the show, and they're allowed to do that because we don't hire educators who coach anymore. In fact, some districts, I'm sure, go out of their way to make sure they're not hiring those guys. And my question to that is, if it's important to excel in state exams academically, why is it not important to excel athletically? If Thomas Jefferson thought the two went together, you would think that some bureaucrat in today's world could think they went together too.
That's a whole other podcast.
We're successful because of the relationships that my building allows me and our players to create. And we can say it's football camp, and we can say it's going to Modern Day. We can say it's zero period, but at the end of the day, it's about those why did I go to Modern Day? Well, because I had a relationship with my 9 seniors, and that relationship made me want to do something for them and made them want to do something for me. If I'm an off-campus coach, there's no relationship there, and we never go to Modern Day.
Yeah.
And we're not having this, and we're not having this podcast now, because I'm not an influence anywhere. I'm a putz. But it's relationships and culture, and like I said, get your kids out of a small puddle of water and in a big puddle. Get them off campus. We had a playoff game one year, and we had to go 8 hours to go play the game, and I left early enough so where my kids could get a tour of U of O's football field and football facilities. Not because any of my kids were going to go play there, but because they felt like they belonged. Hey, coach got us. The Oregon coaches are talking to us. They're giving us a show of the facilities, and I'm not ever going to have a kid play at Oregon. We don't have those kind of athletes here, and I'm okay with that. I coach high school football to turn out great young men, and so far, so good.
Absolutely.
So far, we're doing okay. But I think those are the things that stick out the most. I really do. And those can occur at big schools, small schools, tweener schools. I think small schools have some unique challenges. As we spoke to earlier, and I think some big schools, how do you create a family atmosphere on a squad of 110 kids? It's a lot easier to create an atmosphere on a squad of 30 to 35 kids. So, I'm certainly not an expert. I certainly don't want to be, the guru of high school football. I just want to help coaches be better coaches. I want to help any way I can save the game, keep it on our high school campuses, keep it in the control of educators, get through this hysteria, the same hysteria that racked the game in the early 1900s. Because you and I both know what a valuable educational tool this game is.
Without a doubt.
There are things taught down there that you can't teach in a classroom. You can't. I get in trouble, as you can imagine, because I'm not really good at thinking before I speak. But John Madden, I put a quote up in my weight room. I'm big on quotes. John Madden, and it's in one of Bruce Brown's books. But John Madden says you cannot learn leadership in a classroom. It has to be learned on a battlefield, a playing field, a playing court, someplace where true adversity is a player in the contest. And I believe in that so much. And that's not to take away from student council leaders and leaders in the classroom, but I just agree with John Madden. It has to happen out there. I've seen what kids do when they're faced with adversity, when they've been trained and nurtured right. And I'm not that fearful of the future. Maybe because we don't have as many smartphones in Gold Beach as the rest of you do, but our kids are, I'm concerned, but at the end of the day, we're going to be okay. At least the kids I work with, they're good kids. They work hard. One of the reasons I chose to coach, not only because I want to keep football relevant on Gold Beach's campus, is I had a group of kids that came to talk to me and said, look, you're who we want. We know you're tired. We know you don't want to do this. But we like, how does an educator say no to a group of kids like that? You can't say no. That we wouldn't be educators if we said no. So, instead of, sitting on my porch enjoying the creek, I'm now sitting on my new dining room table on a computer, printing out practice plans and making new lifting routines and setting up parent meetings and all those things that quality coaches throughout this country are doing right now or have done in the last month or so. So it's a fun time of year because we all right now have a legitimate shot at winning it all.
Absolutely.
So everybody's optimistic. Everybody's excited. And I think the only thing I would say is remember our true mission is to raise great, great young men who are going to lead this country. And I think as I've gotten older, I think that mission has become a little more clear to me.
Coach, we met after you won a state championship in 2011. I wrote a book about more than 100 state champs that year. You were kind enough to respond. So that was 7 years ago. Kind of putting you on the spot. I didn't tell you this one was coming. So 7 years ago, you won a state championship. Those kids now are what, 25, 26, 24 years old. So tell us about one of those kids. Just one of those kids that pops in your mind that is out there now, that you helped to develop, you helped to pour into. Last question here on our podcast with Kevin Swift.
Okay, here it is. This is the kid, and I hate to single one out because they all have been uniquely successful in their own way, and I think that's what I'm the proudest of. But I had a 2011, we won the state title with a sophomore left tackle named Brandon Adams. And Brandon, like a lot of big kids coming out of junior high, everybody looked at him and said, oh, wow, he's going to be great. Oh, he's going to do this, not realizing that 90% of the big kids are soft. They've been told all through grade school, don't pick on anybody, be courteous, be nice. And so you get these just great-looking athletes who work hard, but they don't have that, rip the kid's head off and step on his chest and let's keep going. That doesn't come nature to them. So Brandon started as a sophomore and had to play left tackle on top of playing multiple positions on defense. He was our normal defensive end, but when our middle backer broke his ankle week 2, he was the most logical choice to move there. So what I'm proud of Brandon about is he fell in love with the discipline, the structure, and the camaraderie, family brotherhood of our football program, and now is in the United States Navy and their he's not a SEAL, he's the next special forces down. He's the guy that gets the SEALs out of hot water when they need to get out. And I'm extremely proud. I've been here 20 years. I think I sent one kid to a Division I school, Idaho, and it's not even Division I anymore. I have a handful of kids who serve our country in the Marine Corps, the Navy, the Army, that are just amazing young people who took the lessons and the values that this community and our football program taught them, and are now serving their country. So I'm really, and I'm just really proud of those kids. So yeah, that's one kid. He's pretty special. He ended up being a 3-year starter. Had a chance to go play college ball, but he goes, Coach, I want to go into the military.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So one of the other things here, a little funny story about 2011. It was determined at the end of the season that I'm not a very good team doctor because my starting fullback in week 7 sprained his ankle really bad in an inter-squad scrimmage. So we shut him down for a couple weeks, and I said, it's just a sprain, and we brought him back, and he was playing on it. But the week before the state final, I said, why don't you go get an x-ray just so we make sure that we're on okay? And he comes back from x-rays. He goes, Coach, it's broke. And I'm like, wow. You're tough. I go, you're really tough, Kyle. And so the kid played 8-9 of the season and then 4 playoff games with a halfway healed broken ankle. Him and his twin brother shared the starting fullback positions, and they were both starting linebackers on our team. And one was a 4-time state champion in wrestling, and the other one was a 3-time state champion in wrestling. And the only reason he was a 3-time state champion is because he lost to his brother his freshman year. But that was I think what I told you when you said what was the difference between the 2010 team that lost in the state finals and the 2011 team that won. I thought the 2010 team was by far more talented. But the 2011 team had a team chemistry that I haven't seen since. I mean, they were tight. They were on a mission. They had each other's back. You had those teams that you'll never forget. 2011 is a team that I'll never forget because they came out of nowhere. No one expected us to be in the finals. In fact, I told the newspaper before the season, I go, we'll be 6-3. We'll win a playoff game, and that'll be good to build on for the next year. And
wow,
they probably went 13-0 and told the newspaper guy I didn't know what I was talking about. So
that's a great story. Well, Coach, I want to thank you so much for coming on to the Coach's Locker podcast, sharing some tremendous insight for coaches all over the place. And, I thank you very much for taking your time, especially on your birthday, to share your story and share some tidbits for all of us.
Well, you know what, Chris, I enjoy our professional relationship. Anything I can do to help the profession, anything I can do to help you, I'm more than willing to do. You're great for our profession. You're great for the young coaches out there. So anything I can do to help great people make the great game and the profession better, I'm all for doing. So I appreciate the opportunity, Chris.
Thanks a lot, Coach. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
That's it. That wraps up episode 5 of the Coach's Locker podcast. I want to give Coach Swift a big thank you. Big shout out for coming on the show with me here. I really, really appreciate it. I hope you picked up some nuggets from Coach Swift, longtime coach and veteran with a lot to share with our coaching community. You can follow him on Twitter at KDAWGSWIFT. That's at KDOG SWIFT. Kevin Swift. Give him a shout out. Let him know you heard him right here on the Coach's Locker podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at Coach4. That's COACHFORE. Facebook.com/8laces, EIGHTLACES. Visit 8laces.org/podcast for show notes. and a little more info on upcoming guests and topics. Or if you need to find a past episode, you can get it there. Remember to check out the Football Coaching Podcast Network. Visit footballcoachingpodcast.com to see and hear our entire lineup of some top football coaches. If you like listening to podcasts, I think you'll really appreciate footballcoachingpodcast.com. Until next time, thanks a lot, folks.